Okay, so you sent us some articles on alien abductions this time.
Yeah, looks like we're going deep on UFO lore and some pretty famous cases.
We've got excerpts from Wikipedia on alien abduction and alien abduction entities. There's one on the Virginia UFO incident, and even an article from the Appalachian Mountain Club about Betty and Barney Hill, plus a few other intriguing cases.
A fascinating mix, for sure. It's cool that you've got these encyclopedic overviews, but then we've also got those specific case studies.
Yeah, I thought it'd be good to see if we could find some common threads between them.
Right, we can look at those narrative elements, see what makes each case unique.
Where should we even begin with all this?
Well, since you have that Appalachian Mountain Club article,
Yeah.
let's start with Betty and Barney Hill.
Makes sense. Their 1961 experience is like the classic abduction story.
It's a landmark case for sure.
Driving through the White Mountains, encountering a UFO. It's like the image that pops into your head when you say alien abduction.
Absolutely. And you have to remember, this was 1961. The Hills were an interracial couple.
Oh, right. And they were active in the civil rights movement, too.
Exactly, which adds a whole other layer to their story.
It was a different time for sure. Coming forward with this story must have been incredibly challenging for them.
Not to mention the missing time element. They couldn't explain several hours of that night.
Which fueled the mystery even more. It was only under hypnosis that the abduction memories supposedly came out. And Betty even drew a star map under hypnosis.
Which some people believe corresponds to a real star system.
It's wild to think about that their story, investigated by Dr. J. Allen Hynek, had such a lasting impact on how we view alien abductions.
Right, Hynek was a prominent astronomer.
Yeah,
He took UFO seriously, so his interest in the Hill case gave it some extra weight.
it really did kickstart the whole alien abduction phenomenon.
It did.
So from that specific case, let's zoom out to the bigger picture of abduction narratives.
Okay.
That Wikipedia article on alien abduction, I think that gives us a good framework.
It does. And I think it's important to acknowledge this right up front. Mainstream science is generally pretty skeptical of all this.
Makes sense. They want concrete, verifiable evidence.
Exactly.
But even if we put aside the question of scientific proof, there are still some common themes that emerge in these accounts.
Right. Oh, absolutely. You see a lot of similar experiences, capture medical examination, sometimes even other procedures like child presentation or conferences with aliens.
It's interesting how hypnosis keeps coming up as a way to retrieve those memories.
Right. It's definitely a point of contention.
Some people say it can lead to false memories or that the memories aren't accurate.
Exactly. It's tricky. But regardless of the accuracy, the impact of these narratives on the people who believe them is undeniable.
It's true. Terry Matheson, he was a literature professor who studied all this. He put it well.
What did he say?
He said, tales of abduction are intrinsically absorbing. It is hard to imagine a more vivid description of human powerlessness.
He's right. There's a real vulnerability in those stories.
Totally. It's both terrifying and captivating.
Oh.
And then you've got the entities themselves. The Wikipedia article on alien abduction entities, it describes the different beings that people report.
Okay, so let's talk aliens.
The gray aliens are probably the most iconic, right?
Yeah, small, slender bodies, large heads, big black eyes. They're everywhere in pop culture.
And it seems like their appearance in pop culture is linked back to Betty and Barney Hill.
Oh, for sure. It's
I mean,
amazing how their account really set the template for how we imagine aliens today.
but it's not the earliest abduction account out there.
Oh, right. You're talking about the Antonio Vilas Boas case.
Yeah, from 1957.
The Brazilian farmer.
That's him. His story goes in a slightly different direction, though.
How so?
Well, it involves a sexual encounter with an attractive female alien.
Okay, interesting.
Boas even said he was exposed to radiation during the encounter.
Now that's unique. Some people think he may have borrowed elements from earlier contactee stories, though.
There is some skepticism around his claims, but it's still an early example of these types of narratives. And speaking of intriguing, we have the Pascagoula abduction in 1973.
Okay, tell me more.
So these two shipyard workers, Charles Hickson and Calvin Parker, they were fishing on the Pascagoula River in Mississippi.
Okay.
They claimed they were abducted. What's interesting is they reported the event immediately.
So they weren't trying to make it into something bigger.
Right. They just seemed genuinely traumatized. Hickson even passed a polygraph test, and Dr. Hynek, he found their experience to be credible.
Wow. So even the skeptics had to kind of pause with this one.
It seems that way. Then just a couple years later, you've got the Travis Walton incident.
And another famous one.
In 1975, Travis Walton was working with a logging crew in Arizona and disappeared for 5 days.
5 days.
5 days. His coworkers said they saw him struck by a beam of light from a UFO.
Oh, wow.
Sounds unbelievable, right?
Ill.
There's been a lot of controversy around that case.
Yeah.
But Walden has always said his story is true.
It's a case that's really captured the public's imagination. Now let's talk about something a little more recent. The Virginia UFO incident from 1996.
Okay.
This one has so many layers to it.
It does. It started with the sighting of a strange creature by 3 young women.
And there was a claim of a UFO crash, right? Military involvement, animal deaths at a zoo.
All of that. Some people even said a woman had been impregnated by an alien.
Seriously.
It's wild. The official investigation said it was all misidentification and routine military activity.
So they said the alien was actually just a homeless man.
That's what they said. But many people still think something bigger happened.
Understandably. And Virginia became a tourist spot after that.
It did. Alien-themed merchandise landmarks, even a spaceship-shaped water tower.
Amazing how these things can put a place on the map.
Okay, so we've talked about quite a few famous cases.
We have.
But there's one more I want to get into, the Linda Napolitano case.
Okay, this one always gets interesting.
It does. The details are so intricate, and there's a lot of controversy.
Sounds like a wild ride.
Well, Napolitano says she was abducted from her Manhattan apartment in 1989.
Okay.
But the abduction was witnessed by 2 men claiming to be police officers.
Hold on. There were witnesses to the abduction itself.
That's what they claimed.
Wow.
It gets weirder. Napolitano said she communicated telepathically with the aliens and received an ecological message. And get this, she claims that high-ranking officials like Javier Pérez de Cuellar, the UN Secretary General at the time, were involved.
The UN Secretary General.
I know, right? It sounds crazy.
It does.
And there are some serious doubts about Napolitano's claims.
Like what?
Some people think she fabricated parts of the story consciously or unconsciously.
Okay.
And there are also concerns about the methods used by Bud Hopkins, the UFO researcher who investigated her case.
Because he relied on hypnosis.
Yeah, which we said can be problematic. Some ufologists, like Carol Rainey, even criticized his approach.
What did they say?
They said he was too quick to believe his subjects and that he might have even influenced their memories through his questioning.
It's a case that really makes you think.
It does. It raises questions about belief memory, the possibility of extraterrestrial contact.
Big questions for sure. Big questions for sure. And it's worth noting the sheer number of abduction accounts out there.
Oh yeah, we've just barely scratched the surface.
There are so many stories, each with its own twist.
It's true.
Some people might write them off as just fantasy or delusion, but I think something is happening, even if we can't prove it. The fact that so many people report these experiences, I don't know, it's significant.
It goes back to that age-old question, are we alone in the universe?
Exactly.
And it's not just, I saw something weird in the sky, it's, I was taken aboard a spaceship.
Right, and the details they give, the aliens, the procedures, the messages, often very specific and often disturbing.
So let's talk about that narrative. What are the most common elements we see in these stories?
Well, like we mentioned, there's that feeling of being captured. You just black out and suddenly you're in a strange place.
That loss of control.
It's scary.
Totally.
Yeah.
Then once on board, they often describe medical examinations. Invasive ones, right?
Yeah. They often focus on reproductive organs.
Why are they so interested in our biology?
That's the big mystery. Some researchers think the aliens are running a hybridization program.
Trying to create human-alien hybrids.
It's a theory. And that's where that child presentation thing comes in. People describe being shown these hybrid children.
Some even report being forced to interact with them.
It's another layer of strangeness to it all.
It is. Are there other types of experiences that people talk about?
Yeah. Some people say they're taken on tours of the spaceship, they see advanced technology or weird landscapes. Others talk about telepathic conversations with the aliens. And then there are these conferences where people receive messages or instructions, but they're usually cryptic.
Like they're testing us or something?
Maybe. And then, of course, there's the whole question of how they're brought back to Earth and why they only have these fragmented memories.
That's the missing time part.
Exactly. They might have vague memories, strange dreams, but the details are blurry.
And some turn to hypnosis to try to get those memories back.
Which we talked about is controversial.
Is it the abduction itself that causes these memories, or is it the hypnosis?
It's really hard to say for sure.
Yeah.
But regardless of the memories, the emotional distress that these people feel is very real.
They're left feeling scared, confused, isolated. It's a lot to deal with.
It is. But there are support groups and therapists who help people cope.
It's so important for them to have that support.
It is. It speaks to the power of these narratives.
Even if the events are disputed, the emotional impact is there.
Yeah.
So looking at the abduction phenomenon as a whole, what are some of the big questions researchers are trying to figure out?
The big one is why. If these abductions are really happening, what's the point?
What do these beings want with us?
Right. Are they just studying us?
Maybe experimenting on us?
Or are they trying to help us somehow?
Or is there something else going on, something more sinister?
It's all on the table. Then there's the question of who they are.
Are we talking extraterrestrials or something else entirely?
Right. I mean, there are theories about interdimensional beings,
Time travelers?
even government experiments.
It really makes you think. And then you have to ask, what does all this say about humanity's place in the universe?
If these stories are true, it changes everything.
It really does.
Mm-hmm.
It suggests we're not alone and that there are beings out there way beyond what we understand.
It's humbling and exciting all at the same time.
Before we wrap up, I wanted to go back to the entities themselves. We talked about gray aliens, but the Wikipedia article mentions others too.
It does.
What are we talking about here?
Oh, it's a whole mix. You've got reptilian humanoids,
Okay.
tall, imposing with scales and piercing eyes.
Okay.
Some abductees report seeing Nordic types, tall and fair,
Like angels.
almost, but with this really unsettling stillness. And then you have the insectoid ones.
I think I'll pass on that one.
Probably wise.
But it makes you wonder, why so many different beings? Is there a pattern to the types of beings and the roles they play in the abductions?
That's what we're trying to figure out. Some people say the grays are like technicians.
They do the procedures?
Exactly. While the taller ones seem to be more like observers or leaders.
Like they have their own hierarchy.
Yeah. And then you have all the reports of crazy technology,
Beams of light that can move people.
devices that scan bodies or take samples.
Implants.
The article even mentions this tiny device like a pencil that can cut through tissue perfectly.
It's like something out of a movie.
It is, and kind of scary.
Totally. If any of this is true, it means these beings are way ahead of us technologically.
Yeah, what can they do? What are they really after?
So as we finish this deep dive, I want to turn it back to you and to our listener. What do you think about all of this?
What strikes me is just how complex these stories are. It's not just lights in the sky anymore.
Right.
It's these detailed accounts of encounters, examinations, interactions with weird beings, even hybrid children. It's all mixed up with human fear and curiosity, maybe even this longing for something more.
You're right. It's like we're trying to understand our place in the universe.
And whether these accounts are real or not, they make us ask some big questions.
Are we alone?
Are there other intelligent beings out there?
What does it all mean for us?
It's a lot to think about.
It is. We've looked at some of the most famous alien abduction cases, from Betty and Barney Hill to Linda Napolitano.
We talked about those common themes, the controversy over hypnosis, the impact these events have on people.
We even discussed those bigger questions about why these abductions might happen, who these entities are, what it all means.
And even though we might never know the truth for sure,
Yeah.
the fact that these stories keep coming back, it shows how fascinated we are with this stuff.
It's a reminder that we want to understand our place in the universe. We want to figure out the mysteries of existence. And we're always drawn to the possibility that we're not alone in all of this. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It was fun.